Well, g'day everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we are working just to use up some scrap leather, and I'm gonna make a keyring. Just using up some scrap rather than tossing out a good piece of leather. This stuff's a little thick. It's the stuff I use for knife sheaths, so it is a wee bit thick for this project, but it'll do the job, and I'd rather use it than throw it. Now the first step that you already saw was casing the leather, which is just wetting the leather off and just letting that water soak in a bit, just so it's getting into the bottom layers, and it just softens up the leather for me. Now here I'm using a circle gauge, and that is my fastener, just to give me an idea of how wide I need the flap, and a ruler to mark where the flap is going to be. This is a little bit that's going to bend over and go around your keyring. And then we're just going to use the circle guide again just to round the end of that flap off and just make it so it's going to finish neat. And now we're just going to cut out the shape. Ideally you'd use a clicker for this, which is a cutting stamp, which has got the preformed shape on it, and you do all the cutting with the clicker. Just makes it quicker, easier and neater. For something this small, it's pretty hard to do with a knife. Not to help things, my knife was pretty blunt, so I needed to change the blade over. Knife blades are cheap, just change them as you need them. Much easier than trying to struggle with a blunt one. Now cutting the curves, it's easier to take lots of little cuts and just slowly cut your way around. So you can see I'm just making multiple little cuts. Same up at the top there, lots of little cuts. And then we're just going to use a little sanding board just to try and smooth the edges off a bit and try and get a little bit more of a round shape. Ideally, you know, you'd use a sander or something like that. But at this time of night, my neighbours would complain if I kicked my grinder on. Next step is we're just going to use a beveling tool, just go around that top edge and just bevel off the edge just to make it neat. And I'm just using a Stanley knife, box cutter, to skive off the back. Ideally you'd use a skiving knife, but I don't have one, so we use what we got and get by with it. And then edge beveling the back of it just to match the front, just so we're at the stage where it's all prepared up. Now I'm just going to case it again, just so it's ready for me putting a design on it. Now I'm doing a flower, so I'm going to start with the center and just draw in the flower shape. This one is a little prairie rose. Okay, quick sharpen up of my swivel knife, and we go across and start cutting. So just cutting out the flower shape, nice and simple. Okay, so now we need to stamp in the bevels, so some bevel stamping tools, and we're just going to go around and give definition to the flower just by pulling the outside edge down and where one leaf overlaps the other, just defining that. Okay, just swapping over to some pear shading tools, and I'm just putting some texture in the petals of the flower. And that's what we have so far. Next I'm just stamping some holes in for the rivet. Then we're just casing down that edge and just going to slick that down just to get it ready for the finish. Okay, all finished on the slicking, and I'm gonna do a painted finish on this little rose. Okay, just gonna do the yellow for the center of the flower first. That's the nice simple one. And just cut in some stamen for it as well. I should have cut them earlier, but it doesn't matter. Okay, the next tricky bit is mixing up the colors. Now, I'm going to do a pink, which means I start with some red. Add in a bit of white. Then mix the two together so I end up with pink. Now I'm deliberately leaving darker and lighter edges, and here I'm going to add a wee bit of black, which ends up being too much. Black is very strong on the colours. Just so I've got across the spectrum of the colours that I want. Okay, we're going to start with our main colour, our pink. Just colour in the whole flower in that colour. And then I'm just going to give it a short rest just so that main colour can dry off a little bit. Alright, now we're going to come back with the lighter colour and just give it the highlights. In this case I'm looking at the direction of light coming from the palette, so straight down from the top. Just marking up the highlights, and then I'll mix it a little lighter and mark again just a little bit narrower. There we go. It just helps to give some shading to it. Alright, change over, and now we're looking at the low lights. So a little bit darker version of the pink. And just working in the spots that it would be in the shadow from where the light's coming from. And then we mix darker again, and again we go with those just a little bit on those shadowed spots. Alright, now that paint's dried off, I'm going to put an antiquing gel on. So just smear it on wet, leave it a little bit of time, and then polish it off. And then I'll do the exact same thing on the edge and on the back. Okay, next up we move to the rivets. So we're just going to Pop the rivet in, put the washer over it, use the tool and just knock it down. Okay, now there is a rounding section on the tool and it is not working too good. These rivets, it's the first time I've used these ones, they obviously haven't been annealed properly and they're still pretty hard. But luckily I'm a blacksmith, so I know how to peen a rivet. So we're just going to cut off the excess, put a little cloth down to protect the marble and then peen it over. Alright, job all finished and it's a good one. Alright, thank you very much everyone for watching. Please hit the like, hit the subscribe and hit that little bell notification so you know when I put out more videos. That would mean very much to me. And again, thank you very much for watching and bye for now.